Welcome back to the show. We got the one and only Matt Hougan from Bitwise. Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show. There he is. Matt, how you doing today, man?
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
It's
Good to
great to
see you.
have you on, no doubt about it. Listen, you have some really great ideas about where this market's going, projections for Bitcoin, and different things going on in the space. The Clarity Act we're waiting for right now. Just let's start with the Clarity Act. How you feeling about it? Do you think we get it done this year? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I do think we get it done this year. If you look at the administration as vis-a-vis crypto since it came in January, they've delivered on their core promises. We got the Genius Act done. We got new leadership at the SEC. We seem to be making progress. I would also add that we saw in the Genius Act that there is bipartisan support for crypto. This is no longer a one-party issue. There were 100 Democrats that voted for the Genius Act. Look, we're going to unleash significant growth in the US if we get the Clarity Act. We're going to make sure that we're a leader in this market. I think we're going to get it done. And I think it'll be a key part of the catalyst that sort of sets the stage for the next bull market.
I think that's so well said. And, we've seen a little bit of pushback because the Dems are saying they want to alter the bill now, right? And I just find that absolutely comical. The last 4 years they had control of government. They could have done it like 4 years for 4 years straight. They could have done it. Now they want this is political posturing, as we know, right? And it always seems like there's some kind of FUD right before we see the bill go through. I say this, and I want to get your thoughts on this, but I think this Clarity Act goes through because, for one, the Genius Act is useless without it, and number two, the Genius Act and the Clarity Act, they don't just release digital assets as an embraced innovation. This is also about a theme and a tone that doesn't get talked about a lot, which is preserving the U.S. dollar dominance in the new digital on-chain economy, Matt.
That's exactly right. US dollar dominance for sure is a huge part, and also US capital markets dominance. We don't talk about that, but it's a little bit softer. But capital markets are concentrated here. Largest stock market, largest bond market, most innovative companies, largest financial services companies. I think the US has woken up to the fact that all of that is moving on chain. And if we don't get there first, it might be in Singapore, it might be in Dubai, it might be in London, it might be distributed. I think people recognize that this is important to our sort of economic future. It's strategically important. So I think we're going to get it done. Yes, there's political posturing. DC is really good at that. But we have been executing on the crypto roadmap, and I think we're going to get it done.
Well, strategically important, and systemically important, I think will be words that we hear going forward too when it comes to these things. I think you make such a great point about going beyond the US dollar dominance and preserving the capital markets, getting them tokenized so we can remain dominant in that area too, because we do have the largest and deepest liquid capital markets in the world.
That is exactly right. But remember that blockchain is inherently global and
Yes.
it lowers friction. So money will move to where the friction is lowest and the movement is easiest. It's important that we're there first because it would be harder for the existing capital market dominance of the US to be threatened if there is not a technological disruption. But a technological disruption that levels the playing field means we have to win again. And we can only win again if we get the regulation in place. I think people recognize that. Importantly, I think Wall Street recognizes that. That's why you see all the major financial firms experimenting in this space, participating in lobbying on the Clarity Act. And when you get Wall Street and crypto marching, sort of together, not to the exact same goal, but to similar goals, I think you're going to get progress.
Well, to your point, I said this on my channel the other day. I said, congressional officials still use U.S. dollars to buy shoes for their children too. So we're going to get that Clarity Act. I don't even care about the drama. That's how important I think it is. And I think everyone in DC recognizes that on every side of the aisle. And of course, there's the political angle too, where you got midterms coming up. And if the Democrats don't want to lose more seats, I think they better fall in line. So we've seen that. We've seen fallout from that. So we have evidence of that
Definitely.
too, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. So with that being said, we just saw the news that there was the BlackRock and Van Eck doing money market funds on the XRP ledger. To your point, Wall Street is coming on chain, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they recognize where the puck is going. They're skating there in advance.
Mm,
You're seeing Wall Street embrace tokenization actually across multiple ledgers,
hmm.
right? You're seeing it on ETH, you're seeing it on Solana, you're
Yes.
seeing it on XRP. What that is telling you is they don't know how this will transpire. And they also know that each particular area has its own important community and its own important economy. And I think that tells you a lot about where things are going. It's not this or that, it's probably this and that. And I think we're going to see more of that experimentation in the next 6 months. Yeah, so those were big news. I suspect there'll be those headlines times 10 over the next 12 months.
And I'm so glad that you brought up multiple protocols, Matt, because that is the world we're moving to, as you just said. It is a multi-chain world after all. And to that point, I want to bring up the maxi tribalism out here is absolutely at a penultimate high, right? I mean, it's just unbelievable, especially if it's a Bitcoin maxi. They cannot stand the XRP family. Well,
Mhm.
I really find it ridiculous because all these different protocols serve a different role. And as you said, there will be many that are chosen, and it'll be a race to see who wins. And isn't that where we get the best out of one another? And I also liken it to, what if we had maxis back in the birth of the internet, right? And then one of the maxis was like, well, I only like HTTPS, right? And then the other maxis like, well, I only like file transfer protocol. And then somebody else, well, I only like email transfer protocol. SMTP. It's so ridiculous. And I do feel like the legislation can kind of, quiet that crowd. Do you think that's relevant?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely relevant. I think people are coming around to that view. They should
Yeah.
recognize that the story is about growing the pie. It's not over the slices of the
Yes.
pie.
Yes.
I would add that I think regulation, better regulation, clearer regulation is going to tamp down
Yeah.
some of the maxi extremism. Some of that stems from the fact that, look, there are some goofy projects in crypto. If you go way down the spectrum to asset number 10,000, chances are it's totally goofy. And I feel like one of the reasons maxis have been upset is they don't think there is this like clarity of what is a legitimate high quality project. I think once we have that, maybe we can take the temperature down. I don't get the maxi perspective. It's like someone who likes gold being frustrated about Nvidia. It's completely like almost irrelevant. Like, why are you talking about Nvidia? It's a different bucket. So I do hope we're on the downslope. At least that's what I imagine.
I hope so too, because I hold Bitcoin, I hold XRP, I hold XLM, I hold
For
so much
sure.
other stuff.
Yeah.
I don't want to miss out. It's so crazy. So yeah, and I do think, the headwinds have turned into tailwinds, and hopefully that ends up kind of, it's like something we'll look back on. I think something else that really lends itself to the maxi tribalism business is that we've been in a speculative market for more than a decade, and that's about to change, Matt. And that's where we really want to take our conversation today, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that's a really great point. We have been in a speculative market where things that influence crypto matter a great deal.
Yeah.
I think we're getting to a fundamental market. You mentioned the tokenized projects launched on XRP Ledger. Like, how do those do? That will influence how valuable, that ecosystem is, right? It's no longer theoretical. It's like their products. Let's see how the people respond to them. Let's see how that ecosystem grows. Yeah, like you could say we've entered the fundamental era of crypto. I think that's probably true. And that's going to be a lot more fun than talking about, what might be. Instead, we can talk about what is.
Absolutely. Where are the numbers? Where are we at
That's
this
right.
week? I mean, absolutely. The proofs in the numbers. I love it. Yeah. Now, with that being said, you guys at Bitwise have ETFs laying in the wait here. Can you, first of all, let's talk about Bitcoin. Now, you've got Bitcoin ETFs. Let's talk about your projection. How's the Bitcoin ETF going for you? And what do you project for Bitcoin price maybe end of the year and then going into 2030?
Yeah, absolutely. The ETF is going well. We continue to get inflows. Bitcoin ETFs in general are probably going to do about $10 billion in inflows in Q3. which is traditionally a quiet quarter
Yeah.
for inflows, right? People are on summer break, they're just gearing up. Q4 is typically much bigger.
Mm.
I think inflows are going to go up and to the right. We've just had our Bitcoin ETF approved on major national account platforms. We're starting to see those inflows. So I'm very bullish about inflows and I'm bullish about price. We said at the beginning of the year we thought Bitcoin could get to 200K. It has a long way to go, but I think it's going to make a run towards that level. I don't know if it will get all the way there, but I think Q4 is going to be fantastic. Longer term on Bitcoin, we just put out a paper called Long-Term Capital Market Assumptions on Bitcoin, about 40 pages of research on the fundamentals of Bitcoin. We think it's going to get to 1.3 million by 2035, and I think that might be conservative. So
Mm.
we're very bullish, both short term and long term. I'm excited to get to October and out of September. But I do think that seasonality will actually repeat. When I look at the underlying data, it's set up really well.
No doubt about it. And it's great. I mean, 10 billion on a slow on the slow tip. I mean, that's amazing.
It's crazy. I mean, that is crazy, right? That obviously annualizes to 40 billion. That would be more than they brought in year one. I think we may get closer to 45 or 50 billion dollars this year. It's a flood of capital, but remember, I tell people this all the time. Institutional investors, according to the World Bank, have $100 trillion in assets. If they're going to be 2% Bitcoin, that's $2 trillion. Bitcoin's only a $2.5 trillion asset, right? 50 billion sounds like a lot until you're talking about a trillion, in which case it sounds like something that you flip into a fountain to make a wish.
Yeah.
There's a lot of room to grow. I think these inflows will continue for a while.
And do you see, I mean, I do. Do you see the strategic Bitcoin reserve going through? I know we're on the edge. We've seen studies for it. Let's talk about that because this could impact price that you're talking about.
Yeah, look, I think there are two levels. One is the formal establishment of it. I think that will go through. I think the big question on everyone's mind is if and when the US will start adding to its Bitcoin position.
Yeah.
I think if that happens, you're talking about a step function up in price, right? We're not going to be in the $100,000 level. If the US is buying Bitcoin, it's going to be multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars. Right now, that's a low probability event, but it's not a zero probability and I think it's not priced into the market. So I do think we'll see the formal establishment of the reserve, and then I think eyes will shift to can the U.S. actually start buying Bitcoin over time? I know that sounds crazy to some people, but think about where Bitcoin is today, owned by I think it's 14 governments versus where it was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
A lot can change in a handful of years, and I would just keep that in mind when you look at these like sort of out of the box ideas with skepticism.
I agree with that, and I have to say, and listen, I've been pounding this on the pounding the ground on this measure for a long time. I firmly believe, and at XRP Las Vegas 25, I had this conversation with Christian Carlo on stage, the former CFTC commissioner. And what I believe is the way to acquire these assets, so it's a neutral way, in fact, it's a revenue share, is that the United States Treasury issue U.S. digital asset bonds, Matt. They issue U.S. digital asset bonds for Bitcoin, ADA, XLMs, XRP, and other U.S. domiciled assets. A product is a product, right? People want it. There's a demand for it. I hold it. I think all of this stuff was created because of the U.S. dollar and dollar dominance and where we're moving into the world. And it's like a beta test to show the world what's possible. I don't think that makes it bad. I think it makes it really great, to be honest with you. And you don't have to share that opinion, but I feel like if they issue U.S. digital asset bonds, they could acquire the assets in the strategic reserve and the digital asset stockpiles. And in the digital asset stockpile, Matt, they're allowed to sell the assets out of there. And that
Hmm.
gives them the same control mechanism as the price of oil and the way they control the price of oil based on production, how much is released on the market, how much is pulled back off. This gives them price control of these assets. And if some of these assets will be payment protocols for clearing and settlement, they're going to want to have some kind of a buffer on it, just like they do oil. And I could see where they would want to have strategic reserve for other assets like Bitcoin and others. to where they don't sell them. And there is a reason to hold this asset for a long period of time, right? So, and if you sell bond issuance on top of this asset, you don't tank the market when they try to sell it off to down pay the debt. You could roll the term out on the bonds and pay it down naturally without affecting the market. Look, I'm just a drummer, Matt. What do I know? But I'm just telling you, I just think that's the best way for them to acquire these assets and do a revenue share. If you could offer the same revenue share as you do on a treasury bond now, there's a lot of people that would want that safe, low risk.
Fascinating idea. Fascinating idea. Look, I do think the administration, as it exists right now, is forward thinking on crypto. So I think they'll experiment with different ideas.
Yeah, I hope they do. I really do hope that they do, because I just see that as such a way to really educate the country on what they could do. Because with the way I think of it, Matt, is like wartime bonds. If you go back to like wartime bonds, the way that issue was, it really repatriates the country, right? In patriotism and supporting the nation, and then moving into this fourth industrial revolution. To me, it's a revenue share, right? So, and the government gets the assets that they need to power through this new economy. So I don't know. Like I said, I'm a drummer. Maybe I've been playing drums too long, but nonetheless, let's keep this thing moving, Matt. All right. So we got the Bitcoin ETF. So tell me, I know you're waiting on an XRP ETFs, but how about Ethereum and everything else? Solana that you're excited about. Talk about all of it.
Yeah, so the big change from the SEC perspective is that they approved what's called generic listing
Yeah.
standards. It used to be that you had to apply for each ETF individually and provide research to support it. Generic listing standards is more like a checklist. If you meet these criteria, which effectively is there's a futures contract on a regulated exchange, whether it's the CME or Coinbase or whatever, and it's been around for 6 months, then you can launch an ETF. There are probably a dozen assets that this applies to, something like that.
Yeah.
And I think you'll see Bitwise and others move rapidly to launch individual asset ETFs, blends of assets, right? The if you think about us, it's like we've been in the kitchen and we had two ingredients, and now we have 12. And in 6 months, we might have 24. So you're going to see an explosion of ETFs. My article, you're a music guy, called it ET Palooza. I think that's what we're going to see. And look, that'll be great for investors. They'll be able to. There are some investors who like to own crypto natively, and there's some investors who like to own it in ETF wrapper, and then there are many that like to own both. They'll have that choice soon. So, that's brand new last couple weeks, but you're going to start seeing those filings and those launches roll out. We're excited at Bitwise to do our part.
I think it's a great point that you make, and I hear people talk about this on why would I buy the ETF if I could just get the hard asset? Hey, these things grow at different rates, ladies and
Yeah,
gentlemen.
yeah.
Exposure to different things gives you exposure to different rates.
Oh, totally right. And like, look, people aren't one-track minds,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't know. In virtually anything you do, you might do it in different ways at different times.
Yeah.
I think it's fine. It's just, if the ETF isn't right for you, then don't buy the ETF. But that doesn't mean the ETF isn't right for
Exactly.
my uncle,
That's right.
right, who doesn't have a self-custody wallet or a Coinbase account.
Yeah.
The ETF makes it easy for him. Great. It's a new market. It's more people who can access this incredible space. So it's strictly good.
It
We
is.
don't need anti-ETF maxis. It's just strictly good.
It is. To me, it really is, because for one, what I see is like you're seeing maturity to market when you see these products released on top of the assets. So why would you not want to see that?
That's exactly right. The other thing you get is not just at Bitwise, but at other companies that issue these products. They then go and talk to institutional investors about them.
Yeah.
So you're getting this educational army behind it, right? I have 25 salespeople who are in the field every day talking to professional investors. Right now, they can talk to them about Bitcoin and ETH. They can't talk to them about Solana or XRP or Cardano or Sui or Aptos because we don't have products. They're like legally not allowed to talk about them. Once we have products, if we have products, then those conversations can pursue. And it's not just Bitwise, it's BlackRock, it's Fidelity, it's Invesco, it's all these other big names.
That's amazing. Now let's talk about XRP, because I know that you guys have an ETF that's waiting. I know, as you mentioned before, the SEC is working to streamline this process. So talk to us about the new streamlined process, which sounds really hugely positive for the market. And also talk about what do you know about the XRP ETF? When could we expect a possible approval for you guys?
I would love to tell you, but the compliance genie on my shoulder says that I can't. Look, I can say
Yeah,
the funny thing is just some fun SOP. The way the SEC works is if you talk about a filing before it's live, they put you in the penalty box. You have
yeah.
like a cooling off period.
Do not do
So we
that.
don't. But I can talk generally.
Yes.
Look, we're very optimistic, as I mentioned, about multiple crypto assets. Certainly, XRP is one of them. Based on these new generic listing standards, I think it's a matter of months, not quarters or years. Um, and we're really excited to engage with the community. We have these products in Europe, and the response has been great,
Yeah.
right? There's significant assets in them, and we're excited to hopefully launch them in the US. That's probably all I can say.
Well, okay, and I totally get that. And we don't want you making anything that slows the process down. No statements on that regard. So nice. All right. So now let's talk about the streamline process that they're setting up, Matt. I mean, this is super exciting. So we're eliminating the 240 days. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, we're going from 240 to 75 days, which is a lot fewer days. There's my math for you. But equally important, the 240 days wasn't a yes.
Right.
Like the 240 days was an answer.
Yeah.
And as a painful example, our Bitcoin ETF filing took 5+ years. Right. So 240 days was just to get an answer. 75 days is assuming it meets these criteria, you can launch. Yes, you have to do disclosures. Yes, you have to work through some things, but the probability of launch is like closer to 90%. And under the 240, for a long time, it was closer to 10%. Right. So this is both an acceleration and an increase in certainty. And that just means you're going to see more products launched. Right.
Yeah.
And it's good.
Yeah. And when it comes to like the XRP ETF and other ETFs, that these are protocols that really are projected to have massive utility. And as we talked about moments ago, we're moving from a speculative market to a utility driven market. So I know that there's a huge XRP family, Matt, and I know that there's a lot of people talking about, well, there's going to be a big demand for the ETS because there's a big retail crowd that loves XRP. I think that's accurate. I think that's correct. But I think that conversation is incomplete because that conversation is missing the decade plus that Ripple has had their head down building relationships with major financial institutions for the day when utility becomes the price driver of this market. So you just talk about that from your ETF position, why you chose XRP.
Yeah, our view on XRP is that the blockchain is really unique. It has a strong community. It has a very long track record. It has incredible efficiency, right? No
Yeah.
cost to run it, which is very unlike other markets. And it's got a broad ecosystem, including Ripple, that supports its development, use, and growth. It's suffered because the SEC had a sword of Damocles over its head for 4 years.
Yeah.
And particularly because it was focused on B2B solutions. If you're being existentially sued by the SEC, how do you convince a major financial services company to work with you? Basically impossible. And so my view on XRP is, look, the world doesn't know what it can do. And that doesn't guarantee by any means that it will have massive use. Doesn't guarantee, but it means it has a chance to compete
Mm.
and to leverage these core characteristics, which is a strong community, a long track record, incredible efficiency, and incredible speed. Those are great characteristics, and now it's on the field, right? Like it was held off the field effectively, and now it's on the field, and now we'll see how it does. That's an interesting asset to allocate to as an investor, and I think that's a message that resonates. Anyone who's followed technology knows that it's very hard to forecast who will win,
Yeah.
particularly in protocol wars. I don't care who you are. You didn't know if HD DVD or Blu-ray would win. You didn't know if Betamax would win or VHS would win. You
Mm.
didn't even know that there were like 20 alternatives to ICP, TCP, IP, right? There were other ways the internet could turn out. If you went at that moment it was really hard to forecast who would win. Of course, it's obvious to say in retrospect, but it's really hard to forecast who will win. That's the moment we're at. And XRP's protocol setup is interesting. Now it's released. Let's see it compete. I think it's a great, interesting asset.
I think that's such a great overview because of it. Your snapshot of the birth of the internet is exactly clear. Like for people, there's a lot of people don't remember that. You know, we're old
Right.
enough to remember that,
Yeah, yeah,
but you
yeah.
know, they don't remember that. There were a lot of different protocols competing, and your analogy about beta and VHS, I mean, all of that. It's so incredibly on point. That is the moment we're in for crypto now. So, with that being said, Matt, like, what are you really looking towards right now in the next 6 months that you're obviously ETF approval is in there somewhere, but other than that, market broad, what are you really looking forward to?
Yes. Let me answer that. And I just realized I actually have to run. I'm just late
Yes.
to a meeting. Um, Look, I think it's the most exciting moment in crypto history, or at least in recent history,
Yeah.
because as mentioned, we've sort of been held back from the starting line from an ETF perspective by a lack of available ETFs, from a real world adoption perspective, from a lack of regulation, from a broad use perspective, from a disengagement from Wall Street and skepticism from mainstream investors. All of that has changed. We're going to have ETFs, we're going to have regulatory clarity. We have throughput on these blockchains that can support massive use. We have the perfect moment for crypto to really scale, and I think it will. So I'm just tremendously excited to see sort of this market unleashed. What do entrepreneurs do when they can build with this technology without worrying about regulation? What do venture capitalists do when they can invest in crypto without worrying about the SEC knocking on their door the next day? What does Wall Street do when there are now safety and security rules around this technology that can move money infinitely faster than JP Morgan or Swift or Visa? That's the moment we're in. And investors who recognize that and aren't colored by the fact that that we've been waiting for this because they recognize that the conditions have changed. I think they'll do well. So I'm really excited for what's going to.
Absolutely. And I know you got to go, Matt, so I won't hold you. All I can say is that I hope we can have you back at XRP Las Vegas 2026. You were absolutely a standout, and we want to have you on stage again, my friend.
Oh, thank you so much. I loved it, and I'll look forward to it. It was fun.
You got it. Matt Hougan from Bitwise, ladies and gentlemen. We'll catch all of you on the next one.